Roots of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, Anne with an E. A usual reminder that if you or someone you know wants to start their own podcast using Buzzsprout as your podcast host is definitely the best thing to do. You can click in the show notes. There's a link provided that will help you kickstart that process. And also you get to support the show. So please do so. And also, let's get into today's episode. My guest is Stephen Mathetsa, who is South African and is originally from Limpopo. He is currently based in Pretoria in South Africa. Stephen is an environmentalist and a water research scientist. This episode, we learn the inspirational story of how, coming from a village, Stephen had no inspiration for school or even STEM. But with the influence of his aunt, he was motivated to take up science subjects in order to become a medical doctor. The medical dream did not come to pass, but he was recently awarded a doctorate from the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa. He pursued his studies there part-time while working in industry. He tells us more about his work in industry as a senior scientist in testing and development. In doing so, we also clear up some misconceptions people have in his area of expertise and as an environmentalist and in his current position. Lastly, we discuss the opportunities that being in science has afforded him and also so much more. So tune in. Let's go. Hi, Stephen. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Anne. Thank you very much.
I'm so excited to have you, to talk about everything that you do and just for the audience to get to know you better.
No problem, and thanks very much.
Sure. Okay, so let's get into it, Stephen. Please just give us a brief introduction about yourself, where you're from, where you currently based, and what exactly do you do?
Okay. As I said, my name is Stephen Mathetsa. I'm starting to like using my middle name now, Matomi, and I was born and bred in a small village in Limpopo. They call it Ramudimuntushe. It's a small village in the north of South Africa, but I'm currently based in Pretoria, South Africa. I'm an environmentalist / water resource scientist by profession. Yeah, and I'm also a PhD holder. I just recently completed my PhD in geography and environmental studies at the University of Witwatersrand.
So we should call you Dr. Stephen. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much.
Congratulations. So before we get into the science and just to break down everything that you do, I just want us to talk about something light, I know that you are a Liverpool fan, right? And, a big soccer fan, particularly Liverpool. And you guys have just won the league after so many years. I'm sure you guys didn't get to celebrate it as much as you wanted to, but how do you feel about that?
Oh, and I'm very much happy about that. This actually has been one of the greatest moments of my life, to witness my favorite team, Liverpool, win the league for the first time in 30 years. The last time they won the league, I was 8 years old. I didn't even know what is happening in soccer and stuff. So to win this for the first time in 30 years, and it's one of the greatest moments of my life. And there's one thing very special about Liverpool. Liverpool is that team that if you check the 30 years of not winning the league, they never gave up. The patience, the passion, the drive, and the dedication coming from different managers, the players, and most importantly, the fans, And every time when they play and you listen to that You'll Never Walk Alone song, when the fans sing that song, and if you follow the lyrics of that song and you are going through anything in your life, you'll realize that you should never give up. At the end of the darkness, there's some light. So I've actually used that song for most part of my life. When I go through some issues, I always think about You'll Never Walk Alone.
Wow, that's powerful. I'm not a big soccer fan. I know it by association. But the way that you've described it gave me goosebumps. And I guess I understand why people are so passionate about the sport. It's more than just the sport. I think the way that you've described it, it's way, way more than just the 90 minutes on the field.
And don't worry, you're not the only person that get goosebumps. I always get goosebumps when I see those guys. I've been watching Liverpool for 20 years of my life now, or even maybe 25. But every time when they get into the field of play and the supporters cheer them up with that You'll Never Walk Alone song, I get goosebumps.
Oh, that's beautiful. And speaking how that the song has helped you in your own personal life, I just want you to please just tell us, how did you actually get into this field of STEM, and what were some of the influences? Did you always know that this is something that you always wanted to do, or was it through other people where you were like, okay, this is something that I'd like to pursue?
To be honest with you, and this is not really what I've always wanted to do. Growing up in a rural area where there's limited opportunities, it's quite difficult, because in my upbringing, I was just a boy growing up in a village with no secondary school until I started doing grade 6. That's when they started introducing a secondary school. And most of the activities that were happening there, you're just a boy. There's cattle farming that you do when you grow up, and you play soccer in the afternoons. But during the day, you also go to school, and it was difficult to understand the purpose of why should one go to school, It was just that thing of, I'm going to school to study so that I can work. But it's not about that, but we'll get to that at a later stage. I didn't really know that I wanted to be in science. And to be honest with you, and you will not believe that I started doing this science during our time. Maybe still the case, there were science streams, economic streams, and history streams. The village where I grew up at, because of lack of resources, like secondary school, they only had that history stream. So I was doing history until grade 8. In grade 9, no, not grade 8, grade 10, which is standard 8 at that time. In grade 9, through my auntie's influence, that I must go do science so that I can be in the medical field. I moved from my school, the school at my village, to a school at the nearby village where they had maths and science. And it's roughly 11 kilometers away from our village. So also, due to lack of resources like transport, I will walk to that school on a daily basis, like 22 kilometers every day, just to do maths and science. And that is the only place where I could be able to do this maths and science, so that I can be into the medical field. And not necessarily that I wanted to be into the medical field, but my auntie told me that this is one of those fields where there's a demand of professionals. So maybe when you finish school, you can go and do your medical degree and work at at the hospital, or those kind of opportunities might arise for you. So that's when grade 11 and grade 12, that is standard 9 and standard 10 of our time. That is when I started doing maths and science and biology. And you will not believe that during some of the classes like your Sepedi and your English and your Afrikaans, I will dodge those classes so I can be able to focus on maths and science.
Wow, okay.
So when I matriculated in 2000, my auntie applied for me to do medicine at Wits, and I could not go through, of which that's some that we can be able to touch later on. I went to Vista University at that time. It's in Soweto, where when I went to register, because they admitted me, when I went to register, the guy who was helping me said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Anything that has to do with science." So he said, "Okay, it's fine." He looked at my marks and said, "You can do chemistry. Go there and register there. You can register for chemistry." It was not necessarily my first love, or not if I didn't know what my first love is. Just wanted to complete school and start working. And from the chemistry part, I moved from Vista to UJ. I continued with chemistry. It was a BSc chemistry and biochemistry, but it was called Geography and Environmental Studies at that time. And that is when, in my final year, I started falling in love with the field of environmental science. And that was when, in our last 6 months of the degree, we had a project where we had to go and analyze water. It was more of analytical chemistry, but I took it beyond just analysis, because it was being into the lab and analyze all these nitty-gritties of water. But to me, it was that, why do we have to worry much about water quality? What does it mean when they say your pH in your water is 7 or pH is 4, and what can it do to a human body or to the ecosystem? So those kind of things really attracted me towards the water science, which led up to me developing this passion, the environmental science, the love for environmental science. And also one thing that really pushed me to understand water science, it's where I grew up. There was also water. It's a very scarce commodity. We still use the boreholes, and where you get water from the municipal supply. There's certain times. There's water. What do you call it in Cape Town? Day zero. We've been getting day zero ever since I grew up. So this terminology of day zero, from where I'm coming from, water is a very, very, very scarce commodity. So I just got to understand, why do we have to I had to link water science with where I'm coming from. Why do we have to use boreholes? It's because as a country, we don't have enough water to supply everyone. We're one of the driest country in the world. So that is where I started to fall in love with man-science interaction and the influence that we are having towards water, air quality, air atmosphere, and animals, the ecosystem, our activities, and how they influence the ecosystem. So those kind of things draw me towards the science field.
Wow, this is such a story, like how you said where you started off, and you didn't even know that this was even an option for you, but I love how you are not a person of your circumstance, and good thing for your aunt for helping you see that there's so much more out there. And although you just randomly selected chemistry, it's good. Sometimes these things happen where they happen for a reason. Sometimes I really do believe that everything's got a specific reason, and that all led up to you being where you are now. And you spoke about Wits earlier, where you said that you in Wits University, for those who don't know, you initially applied to go to Wits in 2000 before you started at the university in Soweto. And interestingly enough, you've completed your PhD there. But how did you end up going back? And did that first denial in the beginning really push you and motivate you for you to get your PhD from there?
Let me just say this, and Wits is one of those, one of the top universities in Africa. When I completed my matric, like I said, my aunt applied for me at Wits to do medicine. And when I got there, they were taking a certain number of people, and based on my marks. And remember, I started doing science very, very late in my secondary school. I only did maths and science for 2 years. So my marks were not good for me to be admitted to be one of the top 60 students to be admitted. So I was offered an opportunity to upgrade, but due to financial circumstances, I could not go back to do matric. No, I had to find something. And this thing of me and Wits has always been there. So when I completed my master's at UNISA in environmental science, I specifically applied for Wits and say, I need to get my PhD. It was a joke, by the way. I just felt, let me just try it and do PhD. And where can I do it?
Okay.
I selected Wits and said, some years ago, 17 years ago, Wits said, no, I'm not, I could not meet their requirements. So now I've got my master's. Let me go and get my doctorate there. Although it won't be a medicine, but it will be a doctorate from Wits. So that's where even when I was there were quite a lot of challenges along the way during my studies. But I told myself, it's now or never. I have to get this doctorate from Wits,
Wow. This kind of links back to what you're saying about Liverpool, that it took them, 30 years. And here you are with your perseverance and not giving up. You went back 17 years later to Wits.
Yes. And I made sure that with that given opportunity, I wouldn't want to do it over 10 years. Like, sometimes the PhD is difficult to do it over 10 years. I had to work hard to make sure that within 3 years, I was doing it part-time, by the way. So within 3 years, I had to make sure that I complete it. And very grateful to my mentors in the project and my colleagues. They were very much helpful in making sure that I completed within 3 years.
Wow.
In a part-time, by the way.
Yeah. I was just about to say, like, what an inspirational story. The people who do it full-time and it's hard. So you're doing it part-time because you are working?
Yes. And for me I think I was a little bit clever, if I can put it, because I had to make sure that the research that I'm doing, it's linked to my work and it's linked to my daily work. So most of the work that I will do, it will still serve as my studies. So I managed to publish three articles out of this.
Wow, fantastic. Sure. Fantastic. That's really great. So now, currently, speaking of working, you are a senior scientist at Eskom Research, and you are in the testing and development section. So for those who are unfamiliar, Eskom is the power utility here in South Africa. So can you please tell us more about this work that you do there and the importance?
Like as you mentioned that I'm a senior scientist in the research, testing and development section. Basically what we do, or what I do there, it's a research center. I conduct a lot of research and investigations on environmental issues. And specifically, one of the research that I did for my PhD, the water, energy, and climate change nexus. It's one of the research that I'm focusing on. Some of the other things that I do are more water related. I provide a lot of guidance and monitoring projects on water resources. You know that water supply, or water as a whole, is one of the key inputs into energy generation processes. Either either from the water supply point of view or from the water pollution point of view. So my biggest focus is on water pollution and a bit of water supply. So in my research as a whole, you know, I'm conducting what they call water, energy, and climate change nexus, and this is one of the least researched project across the globe. If you look at the other nexuses, like your water and energy nexus or water, energy, and food nexus, those are well researched across the globe. But if you bring in the issue of climate change, there's still lack of studies that link all these three elements. And if you look at my organization, where it's sitting, they rely heavily on water supply to ensure that there's sufficient water to those power stations. And there's a growing energy demand across the country, so obviously they have to run on a continuous basis. But if you look at the outcomes of this fuel burning power stations, it's probably one of the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases in Africa, if I may say. So if you look at all these three, it brings this research as one of the most critical researches that ESCOM has to understand, so that they can be able to make informed decisions and policy. Not only ESCOM, even from the regulator side, they need to understand as to what links energy, water, and climate change, and what could be the risks if we don't have sufficient water supply, and what are the risks if we continue to emit greenhouse gases. And from there, you can be able to have a policy that will ensure that you balance between these three elements. So that is my biggest research at the moment. Like as I mentioned, that some of other things I coordinate and conduct water-related projects, such as your ground and surface and groundwater pollution, and waste disposal, and also influence on air quality. I also do some air quality work. So basically, it's a environmental management in ESCOM.
Fantastic. I just want to quickly ask one thing. I didn't want to disturb you as you were speaking,
Sure.
but you mentioned the word nexus. To somebody who doesn't know what that word is, I mean, you said that you mentioned the other popular ones which are currently being investigated, but what is a nexus, if I may ask?
Nexus is clearly a complex interlink. Yeah, the interlinkages between water, energy, and climate change. Like if I give you a bigger picture, like climate change has got influence on water availability in South Africa and other global countries. Water's got influence on energy generation. especially the system that we are heavily relying on as a country in South Africa. And energy has got an influence on climate change in a sense that from our energy process, we release the greenhouse gases. So if you look at this, all these three aspects are interlinked. Unlike the other countries where you get your energy supply you get your energy generation from hydropower completely, or where you get your energy generation from renewables, your solar, your wind. In South Africa, it's a different scenario. We're still relying on coal-fired power stations, and those coal-fired power stations aggravate climate change, and climate change has got impact on our water availability. So it's very important for us to understand these three elements and how they influence each other, so that there's gonna at the end of the day, there's gonna be water and energy security, and we also mitigate our impacts on climate change because it has the other influence, like things like your floods that we always get, your drought. Those are the outcomes of climate change.
No, thank you. That paints a very clear picture, and like you said, this is very important research that needs to be conducted, particularly here in South Africa, when the issue of energy is a very big one. And I know, I'm sure just because you work for Eskom, I'm sure there's a lot of people where already they start asking you a lot of questions. So what are some misconceptions? Because, here in South Africa, we have that issue of load shedding, which is when the electricity comes on and off. So I just want to ask you, what are some misconceptions that that people pursue about the work that you do or the career that you are in that you just want to clear out right now?
Well, let me just say, not everyone that works in the energy space generate energy.
Okay.
I can't fix a transformer, but what I do forms part of the energy generation value chain, because sometimes you have to make informed decisions. You have to understand your environment as a whole. You have to understand what are the impacts and what are the influences into your energy processes. You have to understand how much water can be able to be drawn from one catchment in order for us to generate electricity. So if I'm in that space that I do research on that, I still don't know how to fix a transformer. So, yeah. And the energy industry is very broad. And I'm saying this because at some stage in my village, there was a sort of a load shedding, and I was wearing my work outfit at that time, and people expected me to fix electricity. I can't even fix electricity in my house because that's not my profession. When there's load shedding in my house, we look at each other, because that's not my profession. I might be working in that space, but not necessarily dealing directly with energy generation or energy supply sector. Yeah, well, that's and the other thing I would say as an environmentalist, there's this perception that environmental scientists are there to hinder progress on development, which is not supposed to be the case. But we need to push for compliance because we are running out of resources. We are running out of water resources. Our atmosphere is getting polluted on a daily basis. And we need to ensure that as environmental scientists, what we do is basically to make sure that as environmental scientists, we don't necessarily hinder progress, but we inform the people of the risks that are associated with our activities as human beings. Because there's a very strong interaction between human beings and the environment. So those are the things that you cannot just keep on chopping down the trees. You've got to understand that those trees are feeding you with oxygen. So you need to do everything you need to try and maintain the balance between socio-economic developments and the environmental needs. So that is basically, as environmentalists, what we do. And people get to think that we are stumbling block towards development.
Yeah, that's very true. Previously you also mentioned, when we're discussing these misconceptions, that the energy sector is very broad, and also the environmental sector is very broad. I just wanted to link this up with a follow-up question. You mentioned that you were studying part-time and working when you were doing your PhD. So I wanted to ask, was it easy for you to get into the job market, given your degree in environmental sciences? How did that transfer occur? Was it hard, or were there some challenges in doing so?
I wouldn't really say it was easy, because in most cases, when you complete your studies for the first time, you have to find your way, whether you want to remain in academia or you want to go and serve elsewhere. I remember when I completed my junior degree, my former lecturer told me that, why don't you go and do teaching? 1 year teaching certificate and become a teacher. But I didn't have passion for teaching. Although it's developing now, then I didn't have it. I would say, for me to get into the job market, I was very lucky. I stayed for 4 months without working, and I got my first job as a chemist in a hair product industry. But I only worked for 4 months, because I got drawn back to that project that I did in my final year, where I had to analyze water analysis. So I was lucky enough to get an opportunity at a government sector where they deal with water-related issues. And from there, I had to make sure that I grab that opportunity and work hard to be where I am today. I've worked for different industries along the way, and I just had to make sure that whoever employs me, I leave a mark there. I work hard and make sure that people tend to understand these environmental issues better. So yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. You speak about how you leave a mark and you've worked hard. And although it wasn't easy, I'm sure there was also some great opportunities that being in your field has opened for you. So I wanted to ask you if what are some opportunities that you being in your field has opened up for you?
Being in the field of environmental science, I think one of the biggest opportunities that I had, or one of the biggest learnings that I had to come across, is to understand the interaction between human being and nature and how they influence each other. So that was one of the biggest learning that I took from this. And also the legislation part, because from where nowadays we're being governed by legislation, there's a lot of policies that one has to understand in order to make a decision. So that is also one of the learnings that I had to come across. And in terms of the achievements, I think the approach that I took to pursue my studies on a part-time basis and also work within the very same field, that gave me a very, very big opportunity to be where I am today, because I didn't really have to read hard, because I was dealing with practical things on a daily basis. I would understand what are the interaction between man and environment without even going into a textbook. So that really helped me quite a lot, and I grabbed that opportunity to make sure that I achieve my postgrad studies.
Lovely.
And one other opportunity that I've realized is that that I've attained is that as an environmentalist, you got to interact with different fields, because environment or sustainable development when today environment is one of those critical things that is being considered in developments. You've got to interact with engineers. You've got to play a role in the designs of plans, simply because there's environmental requirements that those plans has to adhere to. You actually interact with everyone within different fields, even from the economic point of view. As an environmentalist, now there's talks about the carbon tax, all those kind of things. So as environmentalists, get that opportunity to interact with all the fields, So yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Stephen, it's been lovely chatting with you, and your story has been so inspiring, like how you said how you started and to where you are now as Dr. Stephen. I'm sure you would have never ever thought about that. So I just want to ask you, what are some final thoughts or advice to anybody who's listening about getting into your career, and also just into STEM maybe as a whole?
For STEM, I think science is an evolving field. So one needs to learn as much as possible. There's legislation that comes in. There's a lot of research and development that comes into the science space, or STEM as a whole. So you need to make sure that you evolve with those developments, and also need to gain as much as you can. You need to read articles about the environment and how it influences the developing space, what has been done across the world. The benchmarking is very important. We've got some of the best policies across the world, like your Environmental Protection Agency and the like. So benchmarking is quite important. You have to understand what has been done there and what informed those kind of policies, and where are we sitting as a continent, Africa, and as a country, South Africa, and how best can we learn from those kind of activities. But on the individual point of view, I think discipline it's quite important. One has to be grounded in order to make it. There's a lot of things that are happening out there, a lot of temptations and all those kind of things. One has to be grounded and ensure that they focus on their goal. Everyone's goal is different, but if your goal is to make it within the STEM, you've got to focus on it. You've got to determine and give all your best. I think one of the most important things is to give all your best once, and you'll reap the rewards later.
Definitely. Sure. And that's a powerful note to leave it on. Just keep on being focused and disciplined. Discipline is always a key that comes with success. And it's been really great talking to you once again. And thank you for taking the time to chatting with me today.
Thank you very much, and for the opportunity. I must say this has been a very great interaction, and I really enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure. And to everybody else who's listening, thank you once again for tuning in to another episode of the Root of the Science podcast with your girl, and with an E. Until next time, goodbye.